Welcome into another edition of the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I'm very excited to lead off today's show with something other than the quarterback battle.
And I'm Zach Hicks. I'm also excited to try to squeak in as many roster bubble names as possible on today's episode.
And I'm Jake Arthur, and I'm so sorry that I'm not Taylor Swift, guys.
Hi, I'm Alan Pinkett, and I finally figured out what my Twitter handle was.
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome in, geeked up and ready to go here on the Colts Squad Show on the Locked On Colts Network. I'm Derek Schultz. I've been a sports talker in Indianapolis for many years and joined by a man who left Notre Dame as the program's all-time leading rusher in a very successful NFL career with the Houston Oilers as well, in Alan Pinkett. And of course, you everydayers know Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts are eyes, ears, brains, boat shoes on the ground all season long. Tonight, we're wrapping up training camp because tomorrow, Thursday, is the final day out there in Westfield with our Colts breakout star candidates for 2025. So we'll start the show with a little bit of optimism. I did mention we're not leading the show with quarterbacks. Of course, it's a Colts show, so we got to talk quarterbacks at some point. We're going to do that in the second segment. What we want to see from both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones coming up Saturday night in their second dress rehearsal against the Packers at Lucas Oil Stadium. Why most of Indy's position battles, guys, may already be decided. We're going to get into that as well later on in the show, and we're going to hit our next position preview. That's what we're going to be doing in all these preseason Colts squad shows, and we'll talk about the defensive line, which has become a very important position, especially with the uncertainty at linebacker and some of the injuries in the defensive secondary. Guys, let's get right into it. There has been and will continue to be a lot of conversation about the quarterback battle. I know that, Jake, you and Zach talked about it earlier today on your show on Locked On Colts, but I just thought as a palate cleanser, we would lead with something else and we would talk optimism and happy, fun, sunshine, rainbow things, right? Because there's so much dread and gloom over the quarterback battle. I think this team has several candidates for breakout seasons in 2025, several young guys that I'm really excited about. I'm in danger here of one of you guys stealing mine, so please don't do so. I want you subconsciously to just know telepathically who I've picked. But let's go around the room. Zach, who jumps out to you? Breakout candidate, breakout Colt for 2025.
You know, I'll actually do one that's not the most common one here. I'll try to go off the cuff a little bit here.
Not you.
I'm going to go, yeah, not me, right? Crazy. Isaiah, no, I was kidding. I'll go with Nick Cross for this one here. Nick Cross. Okay. I think Nick Cross took such a big step forward last season. I was very, very excited about where his game got to by the end of the season. And honestly, when I was doing like individual player scouting reports this offseason for horseshoehuddle.com, he was probably the guy who improved the most in terms of my perception, in terms of, like, to where he actually was last season. As a strong safety, it's a very difficult position to play in this NFL because you're tasked with doing so many things, from being a split field guy, rotating to single high, coming down in the box, filling against the run, and also matching with tight ends up the seam. And I thought he did a really good job last year. There were some miscommunications. There were some issues in the red zone. But just as a tackler, as a physical player, and as a guy who could take the ball away whenever he was given a chance, I thought Nick Cross had a really great season. Now you have him coming in here with Lou Anarumo's system, where that speed, that athleticism are going to really pay big dividends in the passing game. And then the run game, with so much nickel defense, he's going to be in the box a lot, and he's going to be tasked with being a very, very big part of this run defense to make sure that players aren't leaking out and getting big run gains against them. So I think he's going to be a great fit in this system. He's got to get back from the hip flexor injury right now. That's going to be the big part for him. But once he's back there on the field again, Nick Cross, only 24 years old, very young player, second on the team in tackles last season. I think he was second on the team in takeaways as well, or turnovers forced. I believe it was 3 interceptions and 1 forced fumble. So Nick Cross, I think he can really build on that, get into the Pro Bowl this season, and have a real breakout season.
Yeah, he proved a lot of people wrong last year, Jake. I remember when he injured Josh Downs, and people went apoplectic about it because they're like, this guy shouldn't even be on the team, and now he's hurting 2 roster spots. And, you know, even I was pretty upset about it, and he had a really nice 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in his third year, his first time becoming like an actual full-time starter, there was only one defensive back in the entire NFL that had more tackles, and that was Budda Baker. Otherwise, wow. Nick Cross was in like the top 5 for tackles pretty much the entire season. So already kind of like a soft breakout for him. Not quite a household name yet. I think with Lou Anarumo, he certainly can do a little bit more. That'll certainly break him out. So I like that one from Zach. I don't want to steal either of you guys, Derek or Alan, so I'll go with one that's maybe not super poppy as well.
No, you're doing that now.
Right. I'm really getting myself more into JT Tuimoloau here.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. He's not a starter, so like he's got that against him right now. But at the same time, he's in a group of defensive ends. He's going to get playing time, number one, already because they do a heavy rotation. Number two, these defensive ends, Latu is like the only one who doesn't have like an abysmal bill of health. And even him in college, that was like one of his main concerns. So I think Tuimoloau is going to play quite a bit. He's replacing a guy in Dayo Adangbo who wound up playing the most snaps for the Colts last year and is on paper a much better run defender than Dayo ever was. Now we'll see how much catching up he has to do as a pass rusher. But I was super encouraged by his performance against the Ravens. He left with a knee injury, but he stuffed the stat sheet in his limited amount of time there in the first half. So I was really encouraged by him. I like his length, his power that he plays with. He's not the bendiest or super most like twitchy, agile guy, but he's one of those players that looks like he knows how to use his body and his like the momentum, his inertia to get through to the backfield. So I really like a lot of things about Tuimoloau. And I was lukewarm on the pick initially. Like I liked him as a player, but I thought they probably could have done better from a pass rush stance. But the more I've dug into him and the more I've seen him on the practice field and in the preseason, I'm pretty bullish on Tuimoloau.
You know, JTT is an excellent pick. It's not my pick. But I intend to talk about him when we go through the defensive line because I'm really, really intrigued by him. So it makes me feel like, I might be on the verge of being some type of analyst if I agree with the pick you made. But the pick I have for breakout, and I've talked about him before, Tyler Warren. I mean, the tight end position was so lackluster in terms of production with the Colts last year. 467 total passing yards by the tight end position, and that was what, 4 guys. Tyler Warren did 3 times that. In his production at Penn State. So if you can get any type of production out of the tight end, it's going to make the entire offense that much better. You're going to make more first downs because you got a bigger body to throw to. You're going to increase the quarterback's passer rating, number of completions, because you can throw usually shorter passes to the tight end. It just is going to help out the entire offense by being able to not just feature the tight end, but to have a tight end that is adequate enough that other teams are going to have to game plan against him.
You know what, Alan? I made the show episode's avatar Tyler Warren. So I had a feeling that you were going to say, I was hoping somebody was going to say Tyler Warren. I'm thinking to myself, I think Alan's going to say Tyler Warren because I think Alan really likes Tyler Warren. You are the Tyler Warren guy. I think we're all Tyler Warren guys on this show, but Alan is really the Tyler Warren guy.
We got it.
That's a great pick. I mean, especially considering, like you said, the lack of production for the tight end room. I'm also going to go, I think, fairly more obvious. But the caveat with this person is there's not a lot of room at the end, and he needs help from the position that's throwing him the football. And to me, guys, A.D. Mitchell has everything that you want for a prolific wide receiver. He is traitsy out the wazoo, for lack of a better term, right? The guy can get open. That's never been really the problem for him. The problem for him has been really kind of everything else. He struggled with drops at the start of camp, last year with contact and alligator arms and things like that. I know he drew some criticisms there, but you've seen him roast Charvarius Ward, and high-level defensive backs. I mean, he has that ability. He has that in his bag. And I think once it all comes together for him and once he kind of gets out of his own head, he can be a really, really good NFL wide receiver, like a top-line wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type guy. I think the problem is that the Colts have a bunch of guys in front of them that are really good too. And, we talked last year about, this guy's going to be Alec Pierce's replacement. Yeah, no problem. And then Alec Pierce, boat raced him really in the race last year. I mean, he left no doubt in between who was the guy that was going to be higher on the depth chart. And I think, again, rising tide lifts all boats. I feel like I say that on every show because it's my favorite cliche. But, Pierce's level going up, Pittman being healthy again, Josh Downs as well. I think everybody just rising up as well will make A.D. Mitchell a better player too. So, I don't think the numbers are going to be crazy this year. But I do think that you're going to get a couple of, oh, my God, wow type plays from A.D. Mitchell somewhere down the line this season.
Yeah, I have this funny inside joke with a friend of the show, JV3. We all know JV and stuff like that. Really good friend of the show. But this running joke that I blame A.D. Mitchell for everything. That everything with the Colts offense was blaming A.D. Mitchell because, he has to be this. But the thing is with him, I hold his film to such a high standard because the talent is so high with him. There is maybe not another more talented player on the roster outside of maybe Jonathan Taylor in terms of relative to the rest of the league at his position. A.D. Mitchell has true superstar ability. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the intangibles. Everything is there. The one thing that he needs to get better at is playing when the ball is not coming his way. As a receiver, all the gaudy numbers, all the gaudy highlights, everything happens when the ball is targeted to you. But the way that you get on the field in the NFL, unless you're a top 5 pick, is by being great away from the football. If we look at Alec Pierce last year, fantastic player down the field, but he didn't get many targets. He wasn't this guy who was getting 100, 200 targets or anything like that. Alec Pierce excelled because he would run off his defender on every single play, stretch the field vertically, open up that middle of the field. On RPOs, he was always hitting his landmarks, and in the run game, a very, very good run blocker at wide receiver. When I look at A.D. Mitchell, when he's targeted, awesome receiver. I think he can get better, obviously, with catching the ball. Like that was an issue last year and having the contested catches, but the separation, outstanding. The speed, outstanding. The ability just to get open, great. But the big thing that he needs to do is be just more efficient in hitting his landmarks on those RPOs and making sure that he's making life easier for his other receivers, clearing the field when he is not the intended guy, running full speed on every single route, and then run blocking. Once he does those things, he'll be in the lineup more regularly, and he'll get more targets and as a result have more production. But that's the biggest thing. Really young player, only 23 years old, 22 years old. He just needs to get better away from the football. Be excited doing the dirty work, and he will get on the field more and really hit that potential. But yeah, I hold him to such a high standard because, again, this is a superstar in the making. He just has to do the work to get there. And I think we've seen good progress this offseason, but just carry it into the games, be a little bit more of a dog out there, and this can be one of the best receivers in football.
And, you point out his youth. You said, 23 years old? And so I think all those things will come, especially that intangible of playing hard when the ball is not coming to you. That just takes maturity in the offense and more of an understanding to realize if you go hard every play, then you confuse the defense a little bit more. So that comes with time and understanding the overall scheme of the offense. And instead of just worrying about, okay, well, I can take this play off because the play is going to be on the other side of the field. I don't have to do anything. But in actuality, what you do far side from the ball makes so much of a difference when a defensive coordinator and their staff are watching film, because they look for every single key to let them know where the ball is going. And if you're taking off, I mean, they know how to rotate. They'll look at the body language before the snap even comes to know, okay, it's not going his way. We can key on that. So it's just maturity in the offense and knowing how valuable your carrying out your assignment on each and every play becomes. I went through it too. There were some times when I was going to be on the far side from the play, but it makes a difference what you do on each snap. So 23, maybe 23 and a half, he'll get it.
It honestly, oh, sorry, Derek. I was going to say it honestly is very impactful. Even like if you're not in the plan for the play at all, you're just on the field. But like I've seen so many clips recently, like things that guys do in the NFL now. If you've got a running quarterback like Anthony Richardson, they take off. You're going downfield, confusing your cornerback, thinking the ball's coming to you. You flash your hands, you call for the ball. You've completely taken a defender downfield while your quarterback is running. So like there are creative things you can do. I mean, this is cross sports reference right here, but like Reggie Miller and Steph Curry, devastating without the ball in their hands. You know what I mean? Like there is work you can find to do without the ball to make yourself a nightmare for defenses. So yeah, I'm with you. I love that one, Derek. And then once you say yours, I got to fit someone in I cannot believe we didn't get to.
Isaiah Land.
I was gonna say Isaiah Land. I would say Jake. I think we've all said one, so I think you can say your.
Derek was going to say something. I didn't want to interrupt him again, but Laiatu Latu.
Yes,
that's a perfect one.
Yeah, when Jake and I talked this morning, I was saying I'm leaning Latu, and then I made a last minute change. He's right.
I figured one of us would say Latu, but like we can't move on from here without at least mentioning him. He was very close from those 4 sacks being 7 or 8 last year. A lot of missed tackles. Like I think he's got to get stronger and more in control when he actually gets to the point of contact. But he has at least said the right things in terms of I think I've identified what in the offseason what's going to help me finish more plays, getting stronger, and kind of having a better plan of attack of how these blockers are going to approach me and how I can get beyond them. So I really like what Latu might be able to do. He has been an absolute terror in camp so far. I was telling Zach the other day, I think he's had more practices with multiple sacks than days without sacks at all. So he has really been performing about as well as he could so far.
Yeah, and he looks like a true havoc guy, right? Whereas a lot of these other guys, Zach, that they've had, no offense to like Kwity Paye and guys like that, like they're productive, but they don't keep opposing coordinators up at night, I don't think. I think Latu has that potential.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I know we want to get to the next segment here, but one thing I want to just end this on is when I did this ranking for Locked On Colts earlier this offseason on the 10 most important Colts for success this season. And I think outside of quarterback and the starting offensive tackles, Laiatu Latu is the next most important guy. Because if he can hit his stride and emerge as a legit top-end pass rusher off the edge this year, this Colts defense will improve from 29th last year to a top 15 unit. They just need that legit player off the edge. And if Latu can hit it this year, I think this defense can be so much better.
Well, we can't have a Colts show without talking quarterback, right? So besides staying healthy and on the field, we're going to discuss next what we desperately want to see from Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones on Saturday night. That's when the Colts Squad Show returns. This episode brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and the entire Colts Squad Show are playing Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. My old college buddies, they were just emailing the group last week about an upcoming draft, and I can't wait. Not only for the trash talk, but we're all spread out across the country. The guy that's the commish is down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We got some people up here in Indy. We got people in Chicago. We got people in L.A., just all over the place. And fantasy football with Yahoo, a great way to reconnect with friends just like old times. But with the old comes the new. Awesome new features. In fact, to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues. A killer new way, no pun intended, to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into more of the classic, you still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoo.com/LockedOnNFL. And we're back on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Derek Schultz alongside former Notre Dame legend. Well, I guess you're never a former Notre Dame legend. You remain a Notre Dame legend even after your days. And Alan Pinkett and two legendary co-hosts of Locked On Colts, Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks. Colts and Packers, Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday night, the second preseason game. And we know, how the sequencing, I guess, is going to go with Daniel Jones starting, but we're going to see more Anthony Richardson because making up for lost time. Of course, the broken pinky came in the second series in Baltimore, so we didn't really get to see a ton of Richardson, whereas we got to see a lot of Jones in Baltimore. What do you guys want to see from the Colts quarterbacks on Saturday night the most? Like, what are you really keying in on? Jake, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I want to see him just continue to do the little stuff well, accepting those shorter routes and executing them well.
And we're talking Anthony here with this one.
Anthony, yes.
Yes.
Because that's what Daniel Jones does. But no, with Anthony, accept the small stuff, execute it well, because that's key to a rhythmic offensive passing game. You got to take the small stuff. It keeps the chains moving. It's not sexy, but you got Tyler Warren, you got Josh Downs. Jonathan Taylor is always a toss-up on if he's going to catch it, but like DJ Giddens, Tyler Goodson, you're going to have guys out there that can get you 3-4 extra yards from what you're going to get, where you're going to get them the ball. So last year, the accuracy on that stuff was totally scattershot. You never knew what it was going to be. So, maintain, I really want to see what his, fundamentals and footwork and everything look like in a game setting, because I can tell he is very intentional about it in practice, but we've also seen him in a game just throw everything away and just go completely off vibes. So does he keep his wits about him, and is he still he's kind of in this thing where he's still so raw that where do you abandon your fundamentals and go to just what comes naturally to you? So I would like to see all that stuff kind of married together. We know he can do all the long stuff. We know he can run. I want to see him, number one, stay out there healthy the whole time. I want to see him execute the offensive successfully, but in a boring way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be boring, I think is fine, right, Zach? This is a guy that can be very, very exciting, and his potential is very, very exciting, but it's almost like you want to see the boring before you get to everything else, sort of the walk before you run type stuff.
Yeah, and the big thing with that, when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, you don't want to tame him too much, because what makes him special is that ability to hit the big play, and explosive plays are such a big part of the NFL game, so you don't want to bring him down to such a level where he's just a shell of himself. You don't want to put the muzzle on the dog essentially here. You want to let him be who he is, but you just want him to make smarter decisions within that. We don't have to force jump balls down the field 10 times a game when we can have the intermediate game, when we can have the short game and keep the offense ahead of the sticks and keep them going. But when it comes to Anthony Richardson, the one thing I'm really looking forward to this weekend is, can he avoid the big mistake? And the big mistake doesn't have to be a turnover. It can be what happened on last Thursday, where that one mistake cost him the rest of his showing and kind of was a step back for him. And I'm not trying to dwell on that play, because I do think we have gotten to the point now with that play where we are going too much into it. We talked about it the day after, we talked about it the day of, but we don't want to keep dwelling on a preseason play for a long time. But that's all we've seen so far of him in the preseason. So can he avoid the big mistake in preseason game 2? Can he build off of what he's done this summer and bounce back in a big way? Again, it doesn't even have to be boring for him. Just avoid the big mistake, move the ball down the field, stay within your offense, and get things going. So, yeah, I think there is a way for this to be successful without it being flashy for Anthony Richardson, where for Daniel Jones, it's kind of me wanting the other thing for him, where it's like, I've seen you be successful running an offense, running it like a coach's kid, hitting your P's and Q's, getting the ball out like you have to. Can you give me some flash, though? Can you give me something where everything's not set up for you, like a play where everything's covered and you have to create for me, or a play where there's pressure in your face and you have to get out of the pocket and make something happen on the move? Or, again, backed up 3rd and 10, backed up 3rd and 12. Can you deliver that strike over the middle for a first down? So I have kind of different standards for these two quarterbacks on Saturday, because they are very different quarterbacks. Richardson, just operate like you have to be, operate like an NFL quarterback. Daniel Jones, give me a little bit of that flash. Give me some reason to think that you're more than just a game manager, pocket mover, pocket quarterback that can just stay ahead of neutral situations but struggle in negative situations. So these guys have different standards, but that's kind of the way that this quarterback battle is shaping up for these two different quarterbacks.
Well, Zach, I hope I don't sound like an echo again, but what I want to see is similar to what you've already said. For Daniel Jones, we know what we get. He's reliable. He's going to do the right thing most of the time. What I'm anxious to see is when a play is off schedule, how do you react?
Right.
And I think that's what goes towards that creativity that you're talking about. Because we know a play can go off schedule. How do you react when the play goes off schedule? For Anthony Richardson, I would like to see him take command of the offense, be that calm, quiet leader on the field. And if he can have command of the offense, then the confidence is going to come with that. And then with that confidence, and now he won't have to think about mechanics, thinking about where he has to put his feet. You just make the play. If you have command of the offense and you know what's going on, you're going to have the confidence to just see the guy and just throw it to him, not think about, well, should I throw it 100 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour? Your mind is going to tell you, if you have command, what type of throw to make to that person who's 10 yards away or 40 yards away. So that's what I want to see for him, is just have command, and through that command he will gain confidence.
And I want to touch on that, Alan, because you mentioned the word think 3 or 4 times in there, and it almost feels like, guys, when we saw Richardson at his best last year, albeit against, the Jets and Patriots aren't great, better defenses, right, than they were offenses, but it was almost like at those end of game situations, he took thinking kind of out of it, in the sense that he was just reacting, right? Like it was go time. It has to be now. And it felt like he was almost more comfortable in the controlled chaos of that than he was like in this, early in the second quarter, where I think you're thinking a little bit more, whereas you're just kind of reacting. And I would love to see him just kind of feel more comfortable in all game situations, not just kind of with the game on. We even saw that in year one. Remember the rally against the Rams, I think, and they kept him in the Jacksonville game and all of that. It feels like that's really when he is. I know we're talking about very small sample sizes here because he hasn't been very healthy, but it feels like that's when we've seen Anthony at his best.
I would totally agree with that. And that goes to practice too. Like in the now 3 years I've been watching him in practice, up until this year, he used to be a really rough player in 7-on-7s because it almost was all thinking and waiting. When he would go to 11-on-11s and the pressure was on, boom, he became a much better player, much freer. And again, you can see when a guy, his wheels are turning, he's thinking too much. It was just go, like you mentioned, Derek. So again, it's good that I think we're seeing him become a better player in 7-on-7s. He's kind of balancing all that out. But that's also what makes him so clutch as well, is you kind of just give that player the keys at that point. If you're Shane Steichen, now he's feeding him what to do and everything, but at the same time, he's like, you know what, just do your thing. That's why you're out there. And yeah, I think he's just one of those guys that, for whatever reason, again, maybe that's the reps thing that they keep talking about. They say he just needs more reps to get more comfortable. But yeah, I totally have seen that when you say there's the thinking kind of gets in the way a bit.
Well, and I think biggest.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the biggest thing when it comes to playing in any sport is the ability to put bad plays behind you. We always make the reference with baseball about how, to be a Hall of Fame hitter, you have to fail 7 times out of 10. You have to hit 300, you have to hit 400 to be a Hall of Famer. In football, at quarterback, we're talking about wanting guys to be 60 to 65, maybe 70% passers. You're still failing 3 times out of 10, 4 times out of 10. And that's not even counting for the times that your receivers are bailing you out when you're making a horrible read, or that something went wrong on the play and you still are just getting a completion, but you're not getting exactly what needs to happen there. So guys fail all the time, every single day in practice at every single position. It's about how you bounce back from that. And with Anthony Richardson, I think early in games, we've seen it in his career where 1 incompletion turns into 6, turns into 7, turns into 8. The next best thing that he can do now is just having that short-term memory loss, having that ability to, I made a bad read on that last play. I missed the throw on the last play. My mechanics were off on the last play. Let's get back to it. That play is out of my system, on to the next thing, and here we go. And Alan, as a former player, that has to be the most important thing out there, is just having that short-term memory loss.
Oh yeah, you just when a bad play happens, you got to flush it because it will affect you, and even a loss. Sometimes when I did the broadcast and say Notre Dame would get their butt kicked, the following week I would always say, okay, you don't want to lose to that opponent again. So whatever happened that game, you got to flush it, forget about it, move on to the next thing. So important. The other thing I was going to say in regards to Anthony Richardson, if you want to be on, the same page with your receivers or gain their favor, there is sometimes throwing the ball early or throwing it late. You want to sit on the bench, throw that ball late. Throw that ball early. Now the receivers are going to work a little harder to get their head around because they know that thing is coming. You want to gain favor with the receivers. Now, a lot of this takes the quarterback knowing the system backwards and forwards, knowing all the idiosyncrasies of the receivers. But this is why they practice, so he can know that when AD takes a step a certain way, okay, he's going to cut. He's cutting out right now. I can let this ball go right now. That's why you practice. But if he's early with the ball, he will gain more respect from the receivers than if he's late. If he's late, then the defenses will love him.
To Zach's point, my wife got mad at me today because I lost my glasses. And I'm going to tell her, actually, the short-term memory loss is a good thing, and I'll let you guys know how that goes when I bring up that conversation.
Well, you'll say it's 3 times out of 10. I don't forget.
That's right.
In the Hall of Fame. That's what it should be. I should be in the Hall of Fame for that.
Give me a little bit of a break here. But what? Just one last note on Daniel Jones, and Jake, you can cite this because I think you were actually there. There was a play in Westfield. I don't remember which day it was. And A.D. Mitchell, I think it was, apparently broke loose and was wide open and just running by himself. And Jones badly underthrew the ball. And Mitchell came back and got it and all of that. To me, unlike Minshew and Jacoby Brissett, I don't think Daniel Jones is completely petrified of throwing the ball deep. It's just not really something that he can do. To me, I just want to see him do that every once in a while, just to know that if there's a broken play or something, where his guy, Pierce, Mitchell, the Colts have a bunch of guys that can create separation like that he can make that throw when it really counts.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're throwing to A.D. Mitchell, you're throwing to a guy who is capable of winning those contested catches, even when he has to kind of contort himself, because A.D. did have to completely stop, let the defender fly by, and then almost dip down to the ground, and he bobbled it and then caught it. But yeah, I agree. I'm going to kind of marry what Alan said with what Zach said here, because Zach and I talked about this on the show earlier. One thing I remember about Phillip Rivers when he was here, obviously his arm strength by that point wasn't totally cooked, but it was not what it once was. He found a way to throw the deep ball by throwing it early. He threw the ball to T.Y. Hilton very early downfield to let T.Y. run under it and get it. That way, T.Y.'s not already 30 yards downfield and Phillip is trying his best to get his arm to cooperate. That's not how it matters. So if Daniel, again, he's getting to be an older guy now, if he can teach himself a new trick and kind of come to terms with, hey, my arm strength's not the best, I'm not going to throw it 60 yards, but there are ways I can be a successful downfield passer, I think that would certainly work. In the spring and the summer, he has tried to go for Alec Pierce plenty of times downfield, and Anthony Gould. He hasn't seemed totally, averse to throwing the ball downfield. Like you said, Derek, though, it just doesn't always look good. So We'll see. I have kind of challenged him on it a couple times. I don't think he agrees with the fact that he doesn't test throwing the ball downfield, even though statistics speak otherwise. But we'll see. We'll see. It's the seed has been planted on my part. I'm just trying. That's all I'm doing.
I'm going to recall here, but I'm pretty sure that 2020 Colts team was 5th or 6th in the entire NFL in yards after catch. I think Zach Pascal had a really big year, I remember, in Yak. And a lot of that was not because that was a great receiver room, because it was not. It was
Naheem Hines.
Yeah,
you had Naheem Hines.
Pittman had a good chunk too that year.
Yeah.
Pittman had a lot of yards after catch that year.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're appreciating the Rivers season now with what's happened since, right?
We
didn't appreciate it in the moment. Didn't know what we had until it was gone. That's for sure. We're only one preseason game in, but we're going to tell you why it feels like most of the Colts' key position battles may have already been decided. We'll get into that next. This portion of the show brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. Don't know what to play? Check out FanDuel's daily promotions to dip your toe in. The app always makes it fun with new wagers to play in games that you might not have previously even been watching. That's because FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action whenever I lay action on the game. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's new customers betting $5, getting $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet wins. You can do it right now by opening the FanDuel app today or visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And we're back on the Colts Squad Show. And I know that Jake and Zach already did their roster cut-down show the other day where you guys did your roster predictions, and you were pretty much aligned outside of some housekeeping type things. You know, are they going to keep 4 here? Are they going to keep 5 there? Whatever else. I think what's interesting about with where we sit today, guys, is it feels like, you know, if 2 weeks ago you would have asked about, you know, the key position battles, I think you would have talked about the last tight end spot with Will Mallory and Jelani Woods, right? I think a lot of us thought Tyler Goodson and Khalil Herbert was going to be a battle for the roster, and I think a lot of people thought, well, you know, Goodson's been here the last couple of years, and he's okay, whatever, but maybe he's not going to make the team, and now he looks like a roster lock. I know Zach doesn't like bringing up the kickers, but the kickers had a position battle, and that doesn't really look like much of a battle either. Just feels like, guys, with where we sit today, a lot of these spots are already kind of decided. I think the real interest comes from what they're going to do at cornerback because of the injury situation. And, you know, things like, can you get away with all of the backup nose tackles, slipping them through on the practice squad? Maybe you don't need to have them on the roster. You know, things like that. It's almost like the arithmetic, for lack of a better word, is going to be what's the real sort of sweating it out type thing than it is going to be the actual names. I feel like the names we feel pretty comfortable about for making the 53-man.
Yeah, and first off, Derek, the thing we have to say first is we love that you do your research. This is why you host the show here. You're listening to our Locked On podcast, mentioning the nose tackles all getting cut, clearly listening to what I had to say on Locked On Colts, because that's something that I've purely been pushing in recent days. So we appreciate the time that you put in there, Derek. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting with the roster battles is for every roster battle that feels solved right now, I feel like a new one has kind of emerged, and maybe it's not an official cut down battle, but more so like how playing time is going to happen or who's going to start. So we like linebacker, for instance, we came into camp kind of saying like maybe Jalen Carlisle could be pushed by a Joe Bocci. Heck, we did it on our bold prediction show before camp even started, and I had a really hot take that Bocci was going to start over Carlisle. And now it's kind of looking like that might happen, but there is still a 3-person battle for that spot. So it's Carlisle versus Bocci versus McGrone, who we all think are going to make the roster, but we don't know who's going to start there. So we might have more clarity on the kicker position, more clarity on that last tight end spot. Running back feels like we have clarity by issue of everyone getting hurt. I guess we have some clarity at cornerback, unfortunately. But I do think we've had more emerge with, say, again, that linebacker spot with how big is Hunter Wohler's spot going to be? That feels like a pretty interesting one in terms of, is he the sub linebacker this year? Because he's gone from roster hopeful to potential like 200, 300 snap guy on defense this season. So there have been new ones that have emerged, but I agree. A lot of these have been locked up, and I think that's a pretty decent spot for the Colts. It kind of makes those last 5 spots even more crucial for these guys fighting for a position.
Yeah, the roster cut down exercise that we did, at the end of it, it got a lot tougher than I anticipated. You know, guys like Daniel Scott, who a couple weeks ago, I wouldn't have said was a shoe-in, but I was fairly confident he would make it. I had to cut him. You know, cornerback caused a lot of grief because you got to think maybe at least one of these guys goes on IR, and then that's going to open up for someone else. Is that Alex Johnson? Is it Jonathan Edwards? Does Chris Lamont stick as the backup nickel? Because, I mean, who knows how long Kenny Moore is out now. Defensive or nose tackle was a really good one because, again, I couldn't really tell you anything about Johnson Smith or Tupou to this point in camp. Like, I think we need more preseason games for that. But, yeah, it's kind of become a hodgepodge. And like Zach has mentioned, it's kind of created new battles. Like, Tyler Goodson, as you mentioned earlier, Derek, I had kind of written him off when we were doing like before training camp roster predictions. I'm pretty sure I left him off. But now I'm like, is Goodson going to be the RB2 or is DJ Giddens? Because I have become a lot more enamored with Tyler Goodson's pass pro recently because I saw him pick up a couple really nice blitzes that allowed his quarterback the time to make a play just, the other day in practice. So I'm very enamored by that one now. And just as guys continue to ascend the depth chart, they have new competitors that they're going against.
Well, I love the fact that you guys have a breakdown show on who you think is going to make the team. You're probably not going to like this, but I think the roster's made before they even practice one day.
Probably.
I think they have in mind who they want on the team. I've been through 8 training camps. So I've seen some players that, maybe had a good camp and got released. And it didn't have to necessarily be because of talent. It was financial concerns. Got to balance the books and things. But I think that roster spots, they already know what they're going to do before they get to game 1 of the preseason. But they allow for about 4 or 5 exceptions. And they give themselves that wiggle room because they've already got their game plans in place. They know what they want to do. They know how they want to attack these teams. So they're just filling in, the spots. But if somebody else flashes and can add to, what they thought they were going to be able to do offensively, somebody like AD is flashing. It's like, well, our plan was to maybe throw it to Tyler Warren more, but this other guy is flashing. That's an exception. Okay. So I think it's a good exercise, but the coaches and the upper management already know who's going to be on that team before they even, put a pad or a helmet on.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. I think there is, I think Goodson's case might be like the 1% out of 99% of the time. That's just because Alan and Zach and Jake, we could talk about this. They went out and they drafted a running back. And then, Khalil Herbert played extensively in Chicago. He's rushed for, 2,000 yards in his career. I think they were actively trying to see what else was out there at backup running back. And Goodson just made himself invaluable because of all the things that he brings to the table, especially as a core special teams guy. And I don't know if they knew automatically that was going to be the case, but when they saw it in camp and now they're thinking, not only is this guy going to have to make the roster, this guy might have to be our RB2 going into the season. I think there are like extreme cases that sometimes pop up. I'm trying to give Goodson his flowers here because a lot of us wrote him off in Indianapolis and, here he is probably going to enter week 1, likely as your second running back. It's a great story.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Alan too. I'm of the opinion that these teams go in 46 to 48 of these spots are solidified going into camp. You leave a couple open for guys who have just out of their mind camps, guys that you have to make exceptions for, and who proves to be the special teams coach's favorite? Who becomes the special teams coach's little pet find that offseason? We saw Trevor Denbo a couple off seasons ago with the Colts, undrafted free agent. I want to say his guarantees were like 20,000. Don't quote me on that. If his agent's listening, I don't know if it was that much, but that's among like the lower end of the spectrum for undrafted free agents. Little known player coming in here, and he makes the team out of camp 2 years in a row because he became a special teams guy. And that's how you make the team. Tyler Goodson, I think he probably saw the writing on the wall and was like, you know what? I got to really lean into the special teams thing because this is how I can stick. I've been giving Tyler Goodson credit all off season. It's been one of my favorite things to watch is his ability to get up there. But that's the thing when it comes to training camp that we always talk about. Like there are starting spots that are kind of up for grabs. They want to see which guy put the work in the off season. But to Alan's credit, like when they get there on day 1 of training camp and they can see like what shape these guys are in, how much effort they put in the off season, they generally know who's going to win a lot of those battles because so much in the NFL isn't decided in July and August. It's decided in March, April, May, what these guys are doing with their personal trainers, what these guys are doing with their nutrition in the offseason, what they're taking from those exit meetings at the end of the previous season and working on in the offseason, and just how they come to camp looking. I mean, I think the story I even tell to when I talk to like offensive tackles in college and stuff like that, when I'm interviewing them, and I'm like, look, the Colts had this guy, Bernhard Raimann, had a rough rookie season. Not the greatest rookie season, was getting steamrolled in his first couple games that he played. Got a little bit better, but it was looking kind of bleak for him. Comes to his second training camp, 20 pounds heavier, full of muscle, ready to go. This coaching staff was ecstatic about him, and now he's a top 10 paid left tackle in football, top 5 paid left tackle in football. You just have to put the work in the offseason. These coaches know from day one of training camp who put that work in, who's ready to go, and who's going to make this team. So, yeah, we can say there were these roster battles and stuff, but honestly, a lot of these coaches know from day one of training camp who's going to win those battles.
Yeah, and the Colts don't make it much of a secret either with, Jake, I know you had pointed this out. Will Mallory and Jelani Woods, I think it's been pretty obvious where those two have been ranked for most of camp here, just from their actions and when they're playing and who they're playing with.
I would agree. Like, especially if there's a tie, like two guys just are consistently making plays like Mallory and Woods have. Well, Mallory is doing it with either of the two guys that will be playing quarterback for the Colts this year. Jelani Woods has been balling out with Riley Leonard, and that's not really going to make much of a difference. Now, it could get him moved onto the practice squad if he clears waivers, but Will Mallory is going to be the guy. I'm just interested if they're just going to park him as a game day inactive every week or not. But to you guys' point, Zach, with the offseason training, Tyler Gibson's key: boxing and cardio. That's what led to his big offseason.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Boxing and cardio. Okay.
Yep.
I need some more boxing and cardio.
I would say couldn't be me.
Couldn't be us, right?
Yeah.
We're four good-looking guys. Right. With injuries at corner and uncertainty at linebacker, we're going to talk about a position group that has become the most critical on the entire Colts defense next when the Colts Squad Show returns. Back for a final time on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for tuning us in. I'm Derek Schultz. Alan Pinkett is here as well, former Notre Dame running back and Oilers running back, as well as Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur from the Locked On Colts podcast that you everydayers know very, very well. So what we've been deciding to kind of employ on this show is we'll take one segment and just sort of do a position preview. I think we hit corners in one of our first shows. We had offensive line, I believe, last week. I'm excited about the defensive line. If everyone stays healthy, right? Knock on wood. I guess you could say that with every position group. We talked about Latu and his potential as a breakout candidate. You have two mainstays, two core pillars in Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, two of the best interior D linemen in the league. And Kwity Paye is hoping there was a little bit more there. And I don't know, maybe he still can show that as a former first-round pick. But still, like a good, solid NFL player. And some of the depth as well. Samson Ebukam coming back. Tyquan Lewis, who's been here for, feels like a long time now as some defensive line depth as well. But Zach, we'll start with you. How do you feel about this position group overall, including some of the additions that they made in the offseason?
I think the defensive line room for the Colts has the most mobility in terms of where they can be in the NFL. I think this could be a top 10 unit when you factor in everything going right. Just the starting four staying healthy, JT Tuimoloau really acclimating himself this season, and Latu having a big year like we hope he does have. I think this could be a top 10 unit in football when you factor in Louis Anarumo's ability to match coverages on the back end, make quarterback second guess, and give them the time to get that pressure and really affect the quarterback. My concern, though, with this defensive line is, one, the depth. The depth, if a guy goes down, if Grover Stewart goes down with an injury, I don't think they have the nose tackle on the roster that can step in and be a starter. And I think there are teams around the league that can say they can do that. I don't think the Colts can do that. We look at if Buckner goes down, you can't even come close to replacing that interior impact. Again, most teams can't say that with a superstar productivity. And then the edge rotation is really concerning for me because I think they're going to rely a lot on Samson Ebukam and Tyquan Lewis over a player like JT Tuimoloau, who, again, Ebukam is coming off an Achilles injury at 31 years old. That is a death sentence for any position, but edge rusher, especially an edge rusher like him where he was so speed to power dependent, where do you really generate your power, though, in speed to power? From your legs, from your lower half. And if that Achilles is not fully back to strength, when it usually takes 2 years to get back to that strength, I don't know how effective he's going to be this year. And I just don't know. again, I know how this team is. I know how this coaching staff is when it comes to ramming their head against a brick wall to try to get through it. Not capable of getting back to his old self. So I do see a path for success, though. I don't want to just be all negative here, because if Latu can take that step, it changes everything. If you can have 2 force players on your defensive line as pass rushers, and then Grover Stewart's a force player in the run defense, you can have a top tier defensive line in football. But if you're not getting that, and you're relying on pass rushing by waves, and you're starting to rely on Neville Gallimore to be what he hasn't been so far in the NFL, Samson Ebukam to get back to something he might never get back to, Tyquan Lewis hitting a new level at 30 years old, I don't know if it's going to get there for this Colts team. But again, there is a successful path with Latu hitting his potential. And by all accounts, from what Jake has said, he's had a great offseason. So I'm hopeful. I'm just a little wary of some other aspects of this defense.
Well, Zach, you hit the number one aspect when you mentioned depth. Depth is the most important thing when it comes to defensive line, because guys can't sit in there continually trying to rush the passer 9-10 plays into a series. They have to get spelled. You can't line up. Is so important, especially with all the different defensive packages they're going to have. It's going to call for some people to just be classified as the pass rushing specialist, and some guys are going to be the run stoppers. But you need depth to be able to deploy both. So depth is so important. But I'm going to bridge off a little bit. I don't know if you guys know the Kwity Paye story. It's an interesting story. When he was young, I mean, his family had to flee Africa because there was like some civil war in the region and everything. And he came to the United States, and he figured out he was pretty good in football. And when it was time for him to go to high school, he knew that if he got coached up good enough, he could make this his profession. But the high school he wanted to go to required tuition. So he told his mom, you will not have to pay for my college. And sure enough, he made true on that. And I just like that story so much, because that's a guy who understands that he's not just playing for himself. He was playing for his family. And so that's the big thing about camaraderie on a football team, is understanding that you're not just doing this for yourself. Yeah, you want to get playing because that left guard now had his 4th child, and he's got to be able to have enough money to feed that 4th child. When you understand that you're playing for something bigger than just yourself, that's when I see Kwity Paye. That's the kind of teammate I want to have. And then lastly, this JTT, who Jake, you had mentioned as one of the breakout stars. I've been watching this kid for the last 2 years at Ohio State, and when I would watch him, like, whoa, this dude is different. It's like he's heady, but with supreme athleticism. And what I mean by heady is a lot of defensive ends, they just want to fire up the field. No, this dude, he'll come up the field. He sees the quarterback stop his drop. It's like, whoa, he's getting ready to throw. I'm going to go up and tip this pass. So to me, he was just a when I watched him play, and there were guys that got more attention on that Ohio State defense, but I think he was one of the more solid pieces on the defense. I guess that's why Colts drafted in the 2nd round too. But they saw, I think, what I saw. But I'm really intrigued if his learning curve can be accelerated for him to have the type of success in the NFL that he did at Ohio State. You've got a guy there for the next 10 years who's just going to be a stud.
I like that. He definitely is a mindful player. Like, you do see a lot of defensive linemen just trying to cause chaos and havoc and get into the backfield by any means necessary. But he is very strategic in the way he does things. He pays attention. So I like that you pointed that out. I'm I don't know what to think about this defensive line yet. So when you start up front with the fact, Zach mentioned this point on our show earlier, they're going to be out of nickel primarily. They're going to have an extra DB at least on the field throughout. So the defensive line, there's going to be a big onus on those guys stopping the run. You know, Kwity Paye is one of the best edge defenders at stopping around the league. We know Buckner and Grover are pretty good there. Latu, a lot of missed tackles last year. For what we hope he provides in pass rush, could be a little iffy against the run, and that's where you might bring in Nebicom or Taekwondo or JT Tuimoloau. So I'm just a little curious how this is going to work. And then if they wind up playing any of their interior guys kind of out of place, like we saw with Taven Bryan having to be the nose tackle. I mean, none of us really know what's going on behind Grover Stewart, but we've seen Neville Gallimore have to play, one tech or nose before on other teams. And that's not his thing. He's that size, but he is very much more of a 3 tech in spirit. Okay. And so I just think this group is per usual, Chris Ballard and company are banking on certain things. If Adetomiwa Adebawore can develop anything further than what he's given you, that'd be great. You're banking on Latu taking this next big step. You're banking on 30-year-old Samson Ebicom with a Achilles, a blown wheel coming, and I don't think they expect him to regain 2023 version, but they have clearly shown a lot of faith that they didn't need to go out and make some big changes on the line. And that's kind of the thing for me is I don't feel like they did a ton to the defensive line this offseason. I mean, they did lose Dio Adengo and replace him with Tuimoloau, but I kind of expected them to add an interior guy in the draft before the 6th round. And it's not like Tim Smith is a slam dunk. They felt the need to also bring in Eric Johnson and Josh Tupou. So this could go either way. Like Zach kind of mentioned, they could be really good, or they could be the bane of their roster just about by seasons. And I mean, we've certainly seen this defense perform very poorly against the run last year. I mean, it's a new coach, but it's a lot of the same players. So we'll see. I do think there's a potential for them to be pretty good, definitely more so as pass rushers than run defenders. I don't think they're going to totally just bottom out and be terrible against the run, but I do have my reservations there.
And they do have a good mix of youth and experience. Mm-hmm. Both of them are there. And I think that's so important for the young guys to be able to look up to a person to learn how to be a pro. And for the older guys to have that youthful exuberance about playing, to have the enthusiasm of a rookie when they go out and play. And I think that experience just will develop some good camaraderie on that line, because they'll realize all we have is each other. So we got to stick together.
Jake, I'm glad you mentioned Taven Bryan, because I've been around the Colts 20-something years, and my 2 favorite player quotes of all time. One is Edge when they had a preseason game in Japan. He didn't want to travel, and he said, the closest I want to get to Japan is Benihana. And my second favorite quote ever was early in the season. I think it was Nate Atkins, our friend from the Indy Star, went up to Taven Bryan. He's like, hey, why are you playing nose tackle? And Taven said something like, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't know, man, but when I do, it's not going to be pretty. I was like, he's being honest, right? I mean, it was not so pretty.
He didn't want to be doing it either. That's the thing. Is like some of these guys don't want to be put in the position they're put in, but they are the ones that have to be the sacrificial lamb. Like I know plenty of instances of guys who knew they couldn't do a certain thing, but were forced to do it, and we're not good.
Poor Sam Ellinger having to go on their quarterback.
There's that too. Yeah.
I mentally repress most of that, thankfully. So that's one name I'm not happy that you brought up.
Sam Ellinger left a lasting impact on both Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. Both of them are anti-shoes now, and in part due to Sam Ellinger. So not quite on the Mac Hollins school of thought, but they got healthy feet now thanks to Sam Ellinger.
Real quick though, before we get here, since we're talking defensive line, I need to get into my Isaiah Lamb.
We're talking feet. Let's go.
What are you wearing right now, Jake? No, I'm just kidding. When it comes to the defensive line, though, I just want to keep getting my Isaiah Land propaganda in here. Please don't cut this guy. Okay. I just need to get this out here. But this is a player they spent 2 years developing. He's been marinating with this team for 2 years. Every time he gets an opportunity, you see some really good things from him. Only 25 years old, had an 18-sack season in college. This kid has some talent, has some potential. Don't give up on him for a couple 30-year-old pass rushers who might not give you what you want this season. I'm Chris Ballard. I know you're listening to this show at 1 hour exactly, but please don't give up on Isaiah Land. That is my biggest thing for the Colts this offseason. There's surprise cuts every year. Please don't let Isaiah Land be one this offseason.
Let's just end every Colts squad show with an impassioned defense of somebody at the end of the roster. Why don't we just make that a tradition?
You just wait. My Daniel Scott one on Saturday is going to be amazing too.
Oh God.
In fact, Saturday we're going to be back recapping the Colts and Packers, and that'll be obviously the first and only preseason game from Lucas Oil Stadium. So we hope to see you guys then, and we'll be recapping every Colts game right away after the game ends. A couple of minutes after, we'll be starting and that going, and those are going to be a lot of fun. Those game recaps right here on the Colts Squad Show on Locked On Colts, and of course Jake and Zach have you covered every single day for your everydayers on Locked On Colts as well. You can follow along on socials at Locked On Colts, and we will see you next time Saturday night after Colts and Packers right